Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Five Star Zone. Rico Beard, Harold Shelton III from the Big Ten Network, Senior Research Manager, joining us for this episode. And Harold, man, oh man, the Big Ten. Now, before we get into specific games, a buddy of mine brought this point up to me, and maybe you would know because you know the numbers. A lot of low-scoring games, especially locally here in the state. Our team's starting to get tired from the 20-game grind of the Big Ten season, and really not a lack of depth on, for a lot of teams. Like MSU can go deep, but they can't hit threes, so that's kind of the counterbalance to them. Is that the reason why we're seeing such low scores all of a sudden that, teams are just kind of running out of steam?
I think the two games this week were kind of more outliers because if you look elsewhere, like Penn State, Indiana had no problem getting up and down. Ohio State and USC had no problem getting up and down. I think Ohio State got to 87. I think it was 87, 82 last night. And then Penn State, Indiana was in the 80s as well. So I just think this was one of those games, at least for Michigan State, Maryland, where both teams play really good defense. And I think that the energy, the magnitude of the game kind of had everybody a little too hyped up. And it took a while for teams to settle down. And, the second half, I feel like teams were kind of doing what they normally do. I mean, both of them scored in the 30s in the second half. It was just that first half was so bad and it just made look everything worse.
No, it did. I mean, you know what? Let's work our way back. Okay. How about this? Let's go all the way back to last Friday. We did the preview for the Michigan State game. Harold, we're looking at that game. I think I've kind of seen the formula for Michigan State is we're going to use our depth. If they can keep it within under 10 points at the half, I think even though they're losing, they have the advantage because they're going to wear you down. You hit the world with the stat that basically, now I guess it's now 4 straight games that they've held opponents without a field goal within the last 4 minutes of a game. Well, now Purdue hit some, but it's been a grind to score against this Spartan defense. Going into the Chrysler Center in the maze out, what did you see in that game? What could you take away from that game for both Michigan and Michigan State?
So I think for Michigan, it was interesting to see, everything kind of worked through the big fellas as we thought. Danny Wolf had it going early, but didn't do much late. And I think that Michigan State depth kind of wore both of those guys out. Because there were key stretches in that second half where you're wondering, like, well, why is Golden out or why is Wolf out? And you'd hear the announcers say, oh, well, Golden looks gassed or Wolf looks gassed. They need a break. I do think there's something to that depth where you can just throw a bunch of guys at them and tire them out. And there's no proven guys behind them. And so when you do take them out, there's chances, for rebounds. And we've seen Michigan State get a ton of big offensive rebounds late in games. The driving lanes are more open. And so I do think the depth is part of it. And what seems to be an issue for Michigan in these losses, especially to good teams, Trey Donaldson, no show. Now, I think some of that was defensive too. I thought Trey Holloman, Jeremy Fears, Akins, they did a really good job on him on the perimeter. In the Purdue game, he was pretty much non-existent until that game was out of reach. So if they're not getting consistent guard scoring to go along with those two bigs, it's been a problem.
No, it is funny because I said that it's the battle of Treys. Whichever Trey shows up, whether it's Donaldson or whether it's Holloman, advantage to that team. And we saw, Trey went on that run where he went straight NBA jam, just hitting one. And then all of a sudden, I think I heard the announcer say he's heating up. And then finally, he's on fire. I mean, the confidence level of shooting the threes, and it was something that you normally don't see from Michigan State. And I got to wonder if Dusty May was like, well, we challenged them, and we did what we thought we were going to do. They just went out there and hit, 9 threes in that game. It's just like they never shoot that many threes. I mean, when Jeremy Fears is banking one in, you got to just look at the coach and be like, Coach, what am I supposed to do? Because I've noticed that Fears and Booker – teams are leaving them wide open, saying we really don't respect that you can hit that three, and they're starting to do that. If you're Dusty May, I guess what strategy do you do in the next game? What would you change that I guess didn't work for you in this game?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you got to try to get Donaldson involved earlier. I know so much goes through the big fellas and everything, but early on, it looked like Michigan State kind of took the fight to them. Michigan figured it out, went on a 15-0 run because Michigan State always seems to have like a 4-minute scoring drought in the first half. But Michigan couldn't pull far enough away where Michigan State was able to walk them back down. And I think part of that was their three-point shooting was just okay. I think they actually probably need to shoot a little more from three. Because we've seen how good that Michigan State defense is. We see that Michigan doesn't necessarily have the depth to withstand that for 40 minutes. And it can't just be the two big fellas. It has to be the guards doing something. So they got to find a way to get Trey Donaldson going early, get his confidence up, attack the lane, maybe draw some fouls on some of those guards so they won't be as pesky. I think he's kind of the key for them. As much as we talk about Wolf and Golden, if Donaldson's not playing well, this team seems to struggle at times.
All right, so Michigan then shrugs that game off at home. And all right, real quick, before we get into this, I've had a debate with some people. Honestly, if I'm Dusty May, if I'm the Wolverine teammates, I'm just going to kind of stop Vlad Golden and say, you know what, time and place, bro. You're not getting engaged after we just got our ass kicked, okay? Because it's a twofold thing. One, it just looks bad. And two, years down the line, when your kids say, well, hey, Dad, how did you propose to Mom? Well, son, it was after we just got our ass kicked in a basketball game, and I decided, oh, what the heck? I'm just going to go out there and hope that your mom won't deny me at the basket. And she said yes. I mean, I would have waited till another day. I would have waited I understand his family was in town, but you could have just did it at a restaurant, at a park, somewhere else, at the Diag, wherever – on the camp. You could have gone any place else. I wouldn't have did it after the game.
Yeah, I thought the timing of it was certainly strange. And maybe in his mind, it was like, okay, we're going to win this game and then I'm proposed afterward and it's great. And maybe he just didn't have a plan B. And maybe that's just what it was. Right. I agree. But maybe he just said, look, this is happening. We're going to win. It's going to be great. And he might not have even had the thought in his head of, well, what happens if we lose? So I think he just went ahead. It's like, this is going to happen. I said it's going to happen. I'm going to just go ahead and do it.
You've been waiting 2 years. You could wait another 24 hours. That's just how I see it. All right. So then Michigan bounces back. And I say bounces back in the loosest of terms. But they go on the road to the Pinnacle Bank Arena in Nebraska. And they played what I think may have been the ugliest game I've seen in a long time. This goes back to the days, you may even be too young to remember the Dean Smith, North Carolina four-corner drills where they would get a lead of like 4 points and then just keep the rock out and bleed the clock, make you follow. This goes back to the days of Princeton where they would just purposely slow it down. These two teams weren't purposely trying to do anything. I don't know. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was good defense. I think it was bad basketball. 11 for 55 from the three. It was 82 rebounds collected because everybody was missing shots. I forgot the one Michigan player who drove the lane and tried to dunk it and missed it. Like, it was a lid on both baskets. I mean, even the hook and hold that happened with Golden, I'm thinking, okay, Michigan was up 4. Okay, now they can go up. Hook and hold. He makes 2 free throws. They get the ball back, hit a thing. It's 8 points. 8 points is ball game in a game like that. That couldn't have went more perfectly for Nebraska. Misses both free throws, and then they immediately turn the ball over. Nebraska, Hoiberg hits the 3, 1 point game, and then it was just it's survive and advance. Michigan survived. They maintain a half. Now they're a half game out of the Big Ten race. But did MSU take a lot out of them from that game? Was it just one of those nights? Because I mean, they got Rutgers coming up, basically tonight. And how do you shake off that performance of the Michigan State and just you won the game, but you didn't feel good about the win? Maybe that's the way I need to say it. They didn't feel good about that. You'll take it, but that ain't one That's one where you still may burn the film because you ain't gonna learn much.
Yeah, and it's just funny. Like we've seen Michigan do this in different ways. It hasn't quite looked as ugly as it did on Monday, but each of their last 8 wins have been by 4 points or fewer. Like they just find ways to win them, whether they're in the 80s or in this case in the 40s. And it seems like they do just enough to get out of there with a win. And I do have to give them credit for finding ways to win close games repeatedly after not being able to do that in non-conference. But you're going to have to play a lot better to beat Illinois and to beat Michigan State in your last 2 games if you're trying to win the Big Ten. But again, this is looking more and more like a 2-team race, because they continue to find ways to win. And they do need to make some free throws late in these games, though, because this is, outside. You had the Ohio State game where you had a chance to end it. You miss a free throw. Thornton comes down and airballs a floater. This one, you missed a free throw. Esigen's got a wide open 3, misses it. So they've had chances to kind of put it away, and they've made it harder on themselves. And this Nebraska game was 40 minutes of being hard on yourself or making it hard. And they found a way, but it is kind of playing with fire at this point.
All right, so I look at this team, and you got Rutgers, and then you follow that up with Illinois and Maryland, and then they finish with Michigan State. How do you think this team fares in those final 4 games?
I think they beat Rutgers and Illinois. The Maryland game will be interesting to see because they both have really good bigs, and it might come down to which guards play better. And I think Maryland's got better guards.
See, now, let me backtrack because the Rutgers game with Asa and Dillon both playing, I think that they could be the counterbalance to Wolf and Vlad Golden. So to me, that's where Trey Donaldson has to take up that slack and be that third player. If there's no Trey, I would watch out for that because when they played him the last time, Dylan Harper did not play in that game. And that to me was just the difference because it was just really a one-man game.
No, and that's fair. That's fair. I just wonder if Rutgers can get enough stops. If it winds up being an up and down game in the 80s, I think Michigan's comfortable playing that way. If it winds up being in the 70s.
Up and down game in the 80s after watching these last couple games.
Yes, same. Because, that game on Monday, I was rough. And then we saw that first half on Wednesday, and it was like, are they trying to be worse than the game on Monday? So, yeah, seeing an up and down game from a local team would be fun. I do think if it gets in the 80s, it definitely gives Rutgers a chance. So if you're Michigan, I think if you get enough stops, you can win that game. But, yeah, if it's a situation where Dylan and Ace both got 25 and 30 and Trey Donaldson isn't up to the challenge, then – yeah, that could go down to the wire too, which is what we've seen all year long from them.
So we talk about that. Okay, so now Illinois, I don't really know which Illinois team to expect. They're kind of the Forrest Gump box of chocolate. You just don't know until the game gets there. They're well capable of putting up a ton of points. I get his name wrong, but basically he's headed to the NBA. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, Yakachonis,
yeah. Yakachonis could go for 30 and they could win this thing, or I could just see them, shoot themselves out of a game the way they did against MSU and just give me nothing. They are the biggest box of chocolate team in the Big Ten. Normally, I used to say that about Wisconsin, but Illinois, I have no idea what to expect from this team.
Yeah, I think Illinois' biggest issue is that similar to Michigan State, they both struggle to shoot the 3. Like they're two of the worst teams in the country shooting the 3. But Michigan State realizes, hey, we can't shoot 3s. Let's not shoot that many. Mm-hmm. Illinois, on the other hand, says, let's just keep shooting them. At some point, they're going to go in. And so, like you said, they'll shoot themselves out of games because they continue to take really bad shots. And
you ain't lying. They like the player at the club that every girl has turned him down. I'm due. Yeah. Right, or you may need to update your wardrobe and change that cologne.
Exactly. Try something different. And they, like you said, they got a lottery pick in Yakachonis. They got athletes. They got a veteran guard in Boswell. Maybe try to drive, get fouled, get the free throw line. I just watching Illinois has been frustrating because there's a lot of talent there, and like their ceiling's really high when it comes all together. But we've only seen that maybe a handful of times all year, and I say most of the season has been them taking way too many threes and not playing through the post. So if that's going to be the case against Michigan, where they're taking a ton of threes and they're not going in, and Michigan's getting the rebound and getting out and running, we've seen them on the road struggle big time. They lost by 20 in Madison. They lost by 40 at the Garden of Duke. So you can get good Illinois, you can get bad Illinois. And if you're taking too many threes and miss them against Michigan, you're probably going to get bad Illinois.
Yeah, and then Michigan State, a step above rock fight, defensive battle, going up against Maryland and the Crab Five. They had their starters are the best starters, I think, probably in the nation. Bench, not so much, and you kind of saw that in the game. Maryland finished with 0 bench points in the game. MSU, I thought, did a good job on Queen, and they really made him struggle. And I heard the coach come afterwards, Willard, come after and say, they threw 4 7-footers on him, and we all forget that this kid's a freshman sometimes. He got caught up in the hype. Did not have the game that I thought he was going to have. I really thought he was going to have his way, and he struggled. And if you got Derek Queen shooting 3-pointers, I think at that point, Tom Izzo says that's a win. Even if it goes in, that's a win. He's more dangerous by the basket. I'll let him shoot as many threes as he wants. And nobody was hitting threes except for one player on Maryland. They just went ice cold, and I didn't know if that was more so them just having an off shooting night or if it was the Michigan State perimeter D.
I think in the case of Jacoby Gillespie, I think that was perimeter defense. I think Trey Holloman hounded him all over the place, and they did such a great job of helping off of one guy, sprinting to the corner, getting back. I know there was one play in particular where Gillespie came off the screen, went to go shoot, realized that Holloman was right there, tried to pass it, and threw it in the backcourt for an over and back. The defense was really sticky on the perimeter, and we've seen that, for the last several games. And, Michigan State's 3-point defense is it's been elite. Even though they can't shoot them, they're holding teams to 28% from deep. So, if we're not going to make any, you're not going to make any. And then we see what happens from there. So I think that, just Michigan State's perimeter defense played a big part in why Maryland had an off night. I didn't see the bigs of Maryland struggling as much as they did in this game. They're one of the best teams in terms of scoring in the paint. They had 0 second chance points. They got out rebounded by 12. So I thought it was a committee on the glass. I think Jace Richardson actually tied for the team lead with 8 rebounds. So the fact that they all hit the glass, they all did a really good job of preventing layups. Julian Reese was pretty much a non-factor.
I was expecting a lot more out of Julian Reese. He actually had a couple fouls that could have been called that weren't early in the game, could have put him in foul trouble. But, it was one play in particular. You could see the frustration where he was trying to drive and they ended up getting the ball stripped away from him. They just couldn't turn it over. The student section showed up. Everybody was there, but it was like they just got stonewalled. And then, and for the final play of the game, the final couple plays, Trey Holloman goes from just making the biggest bonehead mistake to getting carried off the court. And honestly, when he threw the ball away on the inbounds pass, it was a simple play. He wasn't really being pressed. It was a token press. And you always are like, man, why do you do that? And I guess that's why, because you want the mental mistake. He jumps in the air, throws it, because if he lands, it's going to be traveling. They get the ball. He punched it out, but the referees just saw the reach in and called a foul, which honestly, if you can go to the review, why can't you just go through and say, you know what, that's not a foul? It's okay. I don't know why referees just have to be infallible and just, you know what, we made a mistake. That actually wasn't a foul. It went off of him. No foul. Let's go. But they didn't do that. State sets up. Maryland ties the game up. State goes down. They get the ball in deep to Kohler. It looks like it's going to be a good shot. He just misses it. Kohler's feast or famine. When he's on, he's on. When he ain't, man, he can't throw a penny in the ocean. Maryland runs the ball up the court, and I'm thinking like everybody else, well, either you're going to win the game or take it to overtime. And for some reason, with no timeouts, panic, shoots it with 5 seconds left. State gets it, and Holloman just heaves it up. And Willard, the head coach of Maryland, was like, he knew the second it left his hands, it was going in. I'm sitting there looking at the clock like, wait, did he get that off in time? But you saw that he did. I guess I say all of that to say, from a confidence level, was this just a survive and advance, or is this something that MSU can build off of going up against Maryland in a tough environment at the Xfinity Center and coming away with another road victory?
No, I think this is something you build on. I think Maryland and Wisconsin were two of the hottest teams in the Big Ten, and we'll see more about Wisconsin on Sunday. But the fact that you went into College Park in that environment, pretty much controlled the entire second half. You held a team in Maryland that likes to score 80-some points a game. You hold them to 55. You completely control the glass. You completely shut down Jacoby Gillespie. The fact that he took that three with 5 seconds left was strange to begin with because he hadn't hit one all night. I think he was 2 of 10 from the field. All of his points pretty much came from the free throw line. So I think the way that you basically outplayed that starting five, which was Maryland's biggest strength, like you took most of that stuff away on the road in that environment. And you didn't play well. I mean, you shot 34% for the game and you were able to win a game like that. So I think that just goes to show like Michigan State's mental toughness, the fact that they're able to go ahead and win a game in the 50s. It felt, grimy, muddy, kind of like Izzo likes it at times. And they don't win that game last year.
Virginia game in the tournament a few years ago, that it was basically the first team to make it to 50 points was going to win that game. I think it was a Travis Trice game.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't win that game last year. They don't win that game 2 years ago. I just don't think like they had more shot makers, but I don't know if they were as tough as this team. And this just kind of feels like a team of, vintage Izzo where you're going to have to kill us to beat us. Like we can make mistakes, but we're going to be right back and we're going to get in your face and we're going to take it back from you. And so that Maryland game kind of showed me this team is absolutely in his makeup.
So what do you expect? They come back home finally, and they take on a Wisconsin team that, look, I know I don't want to jest in saying this because now there's a lot of things of you're seeing colleges and point shaving and all, but the end of that Oregon game was like, fellas, what are we doing here? The turnover, the ref overturned it, and then you turn around and turned around again. They just gave away that lead. Like, did Wisconsin? Did they just run out of gas? I don't know what happened, but if you're MSU, what should you expect from Wisconsin this Sunday?
Well, they're definitely guard oriented. They do have bigs that can shoot, so I think that's going to be different. We've seen Danny Wolf can shoot it, but you don't really respect Vlad as a 3-point shooter. Wisconsin's got multiple guys who can shoot it. And, we talking about Blackwell. We know about Tanjay, but, Stephen Crowell can shoot threes. They bring in Nolan Winter off the bench. He can shoot threes, Carter Gilmore. So their offense is humming. And they're going to be able to score from a variety of different places, and they're going to have to be sound to not give up open threes. I do think it was interesting that when Oregon turned up the defensive pressure, those guards started to turn it over, which is not a Wisconsin thing to do. But the fact that they were able to turn them over 16, 17 times, TJ Bamba completely put Tanjay in the closet in the second half and overtime.
They did.
So, it shows that if you can, get up in them, you put some pressure on those guards, make them uncomfortable, then it looks a little different as opposed to guys just free flowing, scoring 80, 85, 90 points like they've been doing. And, Wisconsin did win at Mackey, but we've seen Purdue struggle. Outside of that, they haven't really beaten anybody of note all year. They've gotten a lot of really good performances at home, but they hasn't really traveled as much on the road. And so we'll see if that is the case in this game coming up on Sunday.
I mean, yeah, because when I look at this Wisconsin team and I look at the MSU team, I guess I asked the question, is it possible? Because I had a couple of games. I thought they were going to lose at Illinois. I thought they were going to lose last night. Can the Spartan team run the table and finish with 3 losses in the Big Ten regular season?
It's possible, but I think that Maryland win last night was so important for their Big Ten title hopes in the fact that you can now split these next 2 games and then still beat Michigan at the end and win the Big Ten. Like last night's win over Maryland gave you some wiggle room in case you do have an off night. And, I'm expecting Michigan to keep winning, but even if they drop one, obviously that's perfect if you're Michigan State. But even if Michigan runs it and they're 16-3 going into that final game, you can be 15-4, beat Michigan at the end, clinch a share, get the 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. So even if they don't win the last 3, if you win 2 of the last 3 with Michigan being one of those 2, you still get a share. And like we talked about after they lost to Indiana, they had to steal a couple, and they more than did that.
So I'm going to change this a little bit. Indiana has now gotten hot. Woodson stepped down. Looks like they're going to play them way into the tournament. Any chance Indiana reconsiders and lets, no harm, no foul, we're going to bring Woodson back? Or because I mean, when Matt Painter is basically saying, what the hell is wrong with y'all? This is why you're Indiana. You're not patient. You expect everybody to come in here and win a national title. Now I'm paraphrasing, folks. He didn't say those exact words, but if you watch the press conference, that's really what he was saying. You guys got unrealistic expectations. Bobby Knight is dead and ain't coming back. Have some patience, people. And I'm looking at him now, and I'm like, he's kind of got this thing turned around. Do you want to hit the reset button and start all over? Michigan locks up Dusty May, so he ain't going nowhere. You're going to have to bring in an outsider. And look, Indiana's one of those teams that I don't think they're really going to accept an outsider. I thought Dusty May was the only one that they would accept because he had ties to the Knight lineage. I hear, Chris Beard, like, really? I think it's going to be a recipe for disaster because then I'm looking at – and I forgot why they parted, but Kelvin Sampson has this thing humming in Houston, and you're like, oh, yeah, he was the Indiana coach, but they got rid of him.
Yeah, I think with the Kelvin Sampson situation, I think a lot of that had to do with Eric Gordon recruitment and some potential sanctions, stuff that would be above board now in the NIL era. I think that was part of the reason why they had to part ways back in, I think it was 08 or 09. But I don't think they walk it back, but I do think it's interesting that they didn't give Woodson the time that Archie Miller got previously. And Archie Miller never got to the tournament. Woodson's gotten there twice, won games in both tournament appearances, got a chance to go again this year. We know he can use the resources. He's clearly active in the portal. The fits didn't work this year, but it's not for a lack of trying. And the fact that they just completely turned on one of their own is really interesting. And, it's like you said, Bobby Knight was one of one. Like before Izzo got him a couple weeks ago, like he was the winningest coach in Big Ten history. Like they don't just make those out of thin air. And you keep expecting it to be 1987 all over again, and it's not. And you ran Mike Davis off when he got you to a national championship game, and you ran Tom Crean off. He got you multiple Big Ten titles. It seems like nothing's really good enough at Indiana.
Right.
And so, I don't
– like this is a moment in time where cooler heads can say, guys, maybe we are a little premature. Let's stick with what – like it's amazing what happens when your players come back from injury and you actually have a full roster that you can go out there and you can just win games. And you – go out. You dismantle Purdue. You come back because I thought Purdue had the game, and then all of a sudden, up at halftime, by 14 points. I'm like, well, they coming back down to earth. No, like if you're Indiana, do you really try this again, or maybe try to go out and have a dinner and reconcile with the wife and say maybe let's not get divorced?
Yeah, I don't know if it's too far down the road for them to walk it back. I feel like a lot of egos get involved and stuff at that point. And obviously, I'm not in those meetings or anything like that. But I just kind of wonder when egos get involved and you publicly embarrass me and I put myself out there, do I want to be the guy that say, you know what, I made a mistake. Maybe we should try this. And if I'm Woodson, it's like, well, you already wanted me out. You basically have moved on. Now you're saying you want me back. Do I even want to do this? So, yeah, I wonder if they're too far gone there. I got to give him a lot of credit and that team a lot of credit, because once that came out that he was going to be stepping down, it would have been very easy for that team to just say, you know what are we doing this for? The heck with this. And they've rallied around him. Even in the losses, a lot of them have been close. The Michigan State game, as we saw, they don't play zone much at all. He found something that worked. He stayed with it. The Purdue game, he tried a different starting lineup. He tried his rotations after that in the first half. It didn't work. He stayed with pretty much one lineup the entire second half. Didn't play McKenzie and Bako at all in the second half and worked. And even last night against Penn State, he went back to that lineup that was really good against Purdue in the second half and just rode that all the way through the comeback. So he said, maybe there's certain ways I want to do it, but it's not working. Let me try it this certain way. It's working. Let's stay with it. And he's been winning. And now they've won consecutive games for the first time since early January. And it looks like they're going to get in if they finish up strong.
I mean, I'm in the Big Ten tournament because depending on the seeding, but I said, hey, I could see Michigan State, Indiana round 2, because Indiana, a lot of their guys were injured at the beginning of the season. Now they're back. So they're hitting their stride. Michigan State has the depth. So they're playing, I think like a bunch of people, at least 15 minutes a game. So they're able to rotate guys in. They got the stamina, but Indiana's the team that you probably don't want to see in the Big Ten tournament, because I think Indiana, who's ever one of those top 4 seeds that has to play them, I don't think you win it. And especially they're going to have the crowd. It's going to be all red and white. That's just me. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm like, maybe they just want to reconsider and bring back Woodson because it's working now. It took some time. And it may be a strained relationship, but is it too far gone that you want to start this thing all over? And I hope that, I mean, when the rival coach has to be the voice of reason, man, you've gone a little too far. That's just how I see it. So, hey, another big weekend coming up. We'll see what happens. You got Michigan State hosting Wisconsin, and then right after that, Michigan hosts Illinois. I would be listening to the Illinois game driving back from East Lansing, but I think that these are going to be 2 good games. Is it going to be some separation for first place in the Big Ten? Arrow, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But
yeah, we'll have to wait and see for sure. But it's certainly a 2-team race now. I think the win over Maryland last night pretty much guarantees that Michigan schools will be 1-2, and everybody else is kind of fitting in after that.
But yeah, I mean, now it comes down to, I'm trying to do some quick math, because you had that stat at the end of the Michigan game, but now you add 7 points. So I guess Michigan State's only giving up 16 points now in the final 4 minutes of a game in the last 4 games. That's basically averaging 4 points a game. Too bad.
And all 3 road games in that stretch, they're having a lot of field goal in the final.
And by the way, all 4 of those games, all ranked teams.
Yep.
And a lot of them on the road. So
yep.
3 of them on the road. Wow. I mean, hell of a stat, man. And good pull from you. So because I asked Izzo that question in the interview, and I guess everybody heard and been asking him all these different shows, but it's just like, are you wearing them down? It's a good defense. And he's just like, yeah, they just really took ownership and said, let's lock them down. I give the team credit. They know we can't make threes, but we can play defense. Defense is effort, and you can bring that every night. Whether your threes fall or not, you can play some D. So, Harold, we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens this upcoming weekend. You got any parting words?
Yeah, I just think the Big Ten in general, I know we kind of talk mostly Michigan State, but it's kind of weird this year. Yeah, I mean, they're at the top. So, and the fact that we've seen both Michigan schools win on the road this week, been a weird year. Like the road teams are pretty much even this month. The home teams are only 32 and 31 this month in Big Ten play. Like there's been pretty much no home court advantage like you would normally expect to see. Right. And I don't really know what's causing that, but I would love to be able to talk to somebody and figure out what's causing that, because home court doesn't seem to really be a thing right now.
No, you're right. You're right. All right, for Harold Shelton, I'm Rico Beard. Thanks for watching and subscribing and listening to this show. Hey, keep telling your friends about it. Harold and I will be back next week as we get one step closer to crowning a Big Ten regular season champion. And then next week, we're getting ready to preview the final game, because I still think it may come down to all the marbles in East Lansing. Winner gets to hang a banner. All right, for Harold, I'm Rico. Thanks for watching.